started kind of getting curious of like, where are all these fears coming from? And the most ridiculous thing happened. I started realizing that every single one of these fears wasn't usually even from that person's own experience. It was from just things that they heard.
Hey there, I'm Goli Kalkaran, and this is Lessons from a Quitter, where we believe that it's never too late to start over. No matter how much time or money you've spent getting to where you are, if ultimately you are not happy, then it's time to get out. If you're feeling stuck and you feel like there's gotta be more, there's gotta be a way to feel fulfilled and excited about what you do, then this is the podcast for you. Each week, I will sit down with an inspiring guest who quit their professional career in order to forge their own path and create a life that they love. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Lessons from a Quitter. I am so excited to have you back. And if it's your first episode, we're doing something a little bit different. This one's a throwback to one of our earlier episodes. Since we've been doing the podcast for a year now, I have a ton of new listeners, and some of the fan favorites I'm sure you haven't heard, and so we wanted to make sure these don't slip through the cracks. So today we are revisiting an episode with Pye Jirsa from Lin and Jirsa Photography. His story is incredible. He started out as an accountant at a big firm and decided to leave with his two best friends to start a business. We'll talk about all the twists and turns that took, and it ultimately led them to picking up a camera and teaching themselves photography. They now have one of the premier wedding photography studios in the nation. They're one of the only multi-million-dollar wedding photography studios. They shoot over 300 weddings a year and nearly 1,000 client commissions every year. They have a large team of incredible photographers. You should really check out their website, linandjirsa.com. We'll link it in the show notes because their pictures are breathtaking. Pye is also the founder and partner in SLR Lounge, a premium educational community geared towards providing photographers with real-world shoot education. He teaches photographers all over the world. His story is just really captures the essence of this podcast and how incredible a jump can be and starting over can be, and how it can lead to things that are even beyond your wildest dreams. And he offers some pretty incredible insight. And so I can't wait to jump in. And if you like this episode and you want to meet Pye, then you should come to our live event. We are having our first ever Quitter Club live event in Irvine, California on August 15th at 6 o'clock at night from 6 to 9. We're going to record a live episode of the podcast with none other than Mr. Pye Jirsa and some other incredible past guests like Lori Rowan, Sarah Rezvanpur-Rose, and Sheena Chang. It's going to be awesome. You can meet like-minded quitters, get some support. We're going to have an awesome coaching session from Elena Deutsch, and it's going to be the funnest thing that you're going to go to. I mean, I can't promise that, but I sort of can. And if you want to meet me, I would love to hang out with you guys. So if you're in Southern California and you want to meet all these incredible people, please join us. You can go to quitterclub.com/event. It's going to be really fun, and I hope to see you there. So with that, let's jump in and see what Pye has to say. Hi, Pye. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Goli.
I'm so excited to get into your story and figure out what you're up to now. But I'd love to start out from the beginning, what you studied in school and how you got on the path to becoming an accountant.
Yeah, I feel like that's the path that you go on when you have no path. Literally, I can think of so many of my friends in business school that are kind of like, well, the classic kind of, I don't really know what to do. I think I want to do something in business. And I think accounting would teach me the language of business.
Right.
That's the typical mindset. And then you finish accounting and you get a job and you start doing it and you realize that maybe that particular area is not kind of the right fit. So that was really what it was for me. It was the combination of what would my dad help me to pay for, along with what do I think would be a good foundation, because I really don't know what I want to do, but I want to have something that kind of helps me in whatever I choose.
So once you became accountant and you were working in accounting, like, was it kind of slowly like a realization that, this isn't really right for me? Like, I want to try something else? Or was it you got to a point where you're like, I just have to stop?
It was a little bit of both. There was a pretty quick realization that like, oh, maybe this is not the right path. When, in school, like I really enjoyed the concepts when you're, putting together financial statements and you're, reviewing a business's health from those financial reports. And it's very interesting and it's very analytical and strategic. When you get to like a place like Ernst and Young, you're working with these companies that are, and as an auditor, you're going in and basically testing numbers, and you're working with these companies that are, billion-dollar entities. And instead of looking at an overall financial report, the partner in the company is going to do that. You're going to look over one specific account, like fixed assets. And your job is just to make sure that the fixed assets, are reported correctly. And that is your only job for like 3 months. And so you go from this kind of very high level look and into strategy and planning down to like a very granular level where you're literally a bean counter.
Right.
And you kind of get that sense. And then you look at your senior, you think, well, maybe your senior is going to be the one looking at financial statements. And you're like, no, not really. And then
Right.
maybe the manager is going to be looking at, sometimes senior managers to partners, but that's like 7 to 15 years into the job before you're, at that level. And I kind of realized quickly that maybe this might be a great place to learn, but I wanted to give it a shot. And so I did for 2 years as kind of like, I just treated it like as an extension of my university education.
Right.
Because they also take advantage of you from working standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's funny that you say that because I think, I did that at the law firm too, where you're kind of like looking at the people above you and then you're looking at the partners because it's the same thing in the law firm. It's like the partner is handling overall strategy of the case and whatnot. You're writing like one motion on one issue or whatnot. But the funny thing is even when you're looking at that, like you see those people and they might be the ones doing it, but they're also miserable. So you're kind of like, well, yeah. I could do this for 10 years and get to that point and also hate my life. Like it's interesting when you're even looking at like the grand scale.
Well, that's a funny point because I actually had one of the partners, I had interviewed one of the partners as like kind of the mentorship program. And one of their partners, I went to him and said like, when did you know you were passionate about accounting? And he goes, I hate accounting. Are you kidding me? He's like, I hate accounting. I just can't figure out a better way to make money. And so this is what I did. I'm sure at that point he's making probably $250,000. He's like, you find me a better way to make $250,000 on a guaranteed path, and I would have done that. But this is what I have. It was kind of all about the money. And that was actually the day that I said to myself, I don't want to be doing this anymore. And it kind of clicked for me.
When you kind of decided when it clicked that you didn't want to do this, how did you decide what you wanted to do next?
It was interesting. I mean, you think you have a good plan. I think it's Mike Tyson who said like, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And then basically it all just goes to shiz. So we've been working on this kind of project on the side. It was actually a competitor to like Wikipedia, Yahoo Answers, like a kind of a dynamic method of getting to like these fun, great answers. And we called it Jive Jive. Me and Justin were working on it. We had a couple other, friends and partners that were helping on the project, like develop. We got that to a place where we were ready to go and get funding.
Mm.
And so when we quit Ernst & Young, it was basically to go and start up this project.
Oh, okay.
And then we realized that we couldn't really get funding for it, and it fell through.
Oh.
Our devs left, everybody kind of left and disbanded, and we started for other projects. And one of the other projects we had was a t-shirt company for basically like kind of, it was another one of those, like democratization of production during that time was so unique that all these ideas of like, oh, we're going to make it so people can design t-shirts for themselves and sell them to the community. We're going to do this. It was very much like just a lot of these ideas were floating around. Right. And so we thought, let's compete on that side where we can get designers to come in and create designs and we sell t-shirts. And there was another company just launched similar that was called Threadless.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a different approach, and we got that all the way to investor meetings and pitches where we had received a promise of funding for close to $1 million.
Oh, wow.
So we started, contacting all our friends and getting everything back up and going again. And meanwhile, we'd quit our jobs like maybe a month and a half prior. So we quit the jobs originally for Jive Jive. Then that didn't pan out. After like 2-3 weeks, we're like, okay, this is not going to work, because we've been going to try to get funding for quite a while, actually. And then when people started bailing, it was like, okay.
Right.
And that was only like 2-3 weeks after we left Ernst & Young. So we wrote up this new business plan, this new concept, and we got to that place of like, we had our meetings and we were good. Like we flew back home and we're like, we got this.
Right.
We started celebrating and the check never came. And we reached out to the investor and we couldn't get a hold of them. And then finally we got a response from the investor's son, who manages the investment accounts. And the son said, this is too risky with the recession coming on right now. We're closing down kind of outside opportunities of investment right now.
This was like in 2008. Okay. So really quickly going back. So when you guys were doing this Jive Jive, did you guys have experience in, is this like app development, web development, or coding? Or was it just like you were kind of teaching yourself as you're going along? I mean, how did you know how to start even Jive Jive?
Well, we had been working on it for maybe like 6 months, and we actually had another friend of ours who was the development partner.
Got it.
So he was handling development. Justin and I were basically handling like the concept and kind of like the designs and style and all those things.
So you now quit your job in order to kind of start this business. And when you quit your job to kind of go after this, at the time, were you married already?
Yes.
So what did like your wife or your family or everybody, did you get any pushback about like quitting Ernst & Young to kind of start this company?
Not so much from my ex-wife. It was more so like my father had some major issues with it. And he basically said to me, like, had I known you would make the stupid decision of your life and quit this career with Ernst & Young, I would have never paid for your degree.
Oh my God.
So I understand it.
Yeah.
Like, even at the time, like, I kind of knew, like, well, I've dealt with, like, kind of hate and fear my entire life, whether it's coming from other people, growing up around me, or it's from my own father or high school's teacher. It's become very much like a part of who I am, of, like, pushing back.
Yeah.
And so when he said those things, I kind of went to my place and pushed back and just said, look, I understand this is something that I want to do. And if it fails, then it fails, and that's fine.
Yeah.
He wasn't happy about it, but we kind of left it there.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be for another like 5-6 years when I brought him out to look at our studio space, the one that we purchased a couple of years back, when he finally said, you made the right decision. I'm very proud of you.
Wow.
And that came like 7 years after the fact.
Yeah. But that's incredible. And I think that is what a lot of people struggle with in staying in places that they're stuck in, is because I think a lot of us live in fear or had that kind of fear and hatred and guilt and whatever in our lives. But so many of us are kind of held captive by that. I feel like when your parents or spouses or friends say like, oh, are you crazy? Like, why would you do this? Why would you give up something stable? That keeps you kind of locked in, because you start thinking like, yeah, am I crazy? Like, is this just a pipe dream? Like, why would I give up everything I've worked for? But I think that the moral kind of the story and the right thing is that, yeah, there might be a lot of discomfort along the way, and there's, the tension or awkwardness or whatnot. But at the end of the day, if you're doing it because somebody else is kind of putting you in that fearful state, then you're only going to end up like resenting them and, staying somewhere where you're miserable. I think like having that courage to say to your father, which is very hard for a lot of people, to say like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to do this anyways.
Yeah. And it goes back to my dislike for the word stable. I have a passionate hatred for that word. I mean, the whole notion and concept of it is so, I want to say overrated, but that's not even a strong enough word to define it. What is stable? Like, what in life is ever stable? I don't just mean like from a existential standpoint. I mean like literally define one thing that doesn't change, that doesn't evolve over time. My father would use that word constantly to define his job and what his work was. And he was so incredibly unhappy at his job. And before he could even retire, he had to actually take an early retirement due to health issues. He had health and stress related issues that were so debilitating that his doctor actually said, you can't go to work anymore.
Wow.
He was taking every form of drug and everything. And it was this job with the government where, you would think that as a Department of Transportation engineer, that is, quote unquote, one of the most stable jobs you can get.
Right.
And it's very difficult to get fired from that job. But it's not very difficult to live in a city and state where you face racism as an Iranian man and engineer surrounded by Caucasian middle management, facing constant issues. And my dad might not be the most socially capable person, but he's a smart guy and he doesn't deserve to go into work and to go through walking in the elevator and someone saying, "Oh, don't bomb the building today, Saeed." You know, like very stupid and ignorant jokes.
Yeah.
That eventually took such a mental toll on him. And he was passed up for promotions on the guise of like, well, we want to find someone that can speak English well. And my dad, he might have like the ever so slightest accent, but his English is flawless.
Right.
I was blown away with these things. And when he quit, he later turned around and said, "Look, I have so much evidence to every single thing. I'm going to sue the state for racism, discrimination, all of it." In a case that would take 4 years of his life to eventually win and only basically get back the money that he put into it.
Right.
Where is the stability in that?
Yeah.
What's stable about doing a job that is just unsustainable?
Yeah.
You can't sustain a living doing something that you hate. And the concept of that in and of itself is not stable.
I could not agree with you more. I think that we're sort of fed this lie and it's like this programming. I think you're much wiser than most people. And I think a lot of us get stuck in this tunnel vision. And I've had similar experience with my parents and my parents' generation, you know, growing up as immigrants in America. But same thing happened with me going through law school and my parents kind of guiding me through that. And my mother was a VP of accounting for this company for like 20 years and helped build the company from like a couple employees to this massive company. And she would push me every time I would complain about like being a lawyer and like how much I hated it. And it was always like, well, you know, work isn't fun and just be grateful you have this job and it's a stable job. Ended up sort of working out in my favor is the year before I decided to quit law, my mother very blindsidedly got laid off from this position. And she was, you know, close to 60. And it rocked her world in such a way when you say stable is that she kind of found herself like, it's very difficult to find a job as a 60-year-old. Like they're just going to hire someone that's 40 or 35. And I know there's, you know, discrimination laws and the ageism and stuff, but it doesn't matter. I mean, the reality of it is that when a company is looking at hiring, a lot of times they tend to hire somebody that's younger and has, you know, they don't think that you're going to retire soon and whatnot. And so she found herself in this situation where it's like she had to reinvent her life and she ended up starting a business that's done very well since then. But it totally kind of changed hers and a lot of people around in our community, like their view on this whole quote unquote stability thing, because it's not stable. It seems stable. And even if it is like quote unquote, like you can have that job, like you were saying, I think a lot of my like lawyer friends that I see are the people that I worked with. It's like, what is the point of it being stable if you're depressed or you're miserable or, you know, I mean, lawyers have like these high rates of drug and alcohol abuse and depression and anxiety and suicide. It's just like, so that's the stability you're looking for. It's crazy when you look at it like kind of from a step back, but when you're in it, I mean, that's what you've been fed for so long is kind of like toe the line and get that paycheck and get the house and the car. And, it, you know, a lot of us buy into it.
Yeah, it's a very flawed notion for sure. Kind of one that has driven me. I was 18 years old when I kind of first learned about that concept. And it was actually when I went on a service mission for Mormon. And so I went on a service mission for the Mormon church. As basically 2 years of your life that you give to volunteer. And sometimes, depending on where you go, you'll be asked to learn a language. And I was asked to learn Cantonese. Every one of like my friends, my family, every single person stated their concern. I wasn't very good at school. Like, I mean, I just wasn't focused. I didn't enjoy what I was studying. I wouldn't find till 10 years later. It was probably a little bit earlier than that. I wouldn't come to the full realization that, you know what, I probably just didn't like it that much.
Right.
And it wasn't a system that was designed for me. And that's why I kind of failed it. Because when I went to college, I did really well.
Mm-hmm.
But before that time, when I was 18, it was like, I knew myself that I was going to struggle to learn a language. I was supposed to learn Cantonese, which is the second hardest language in the world. And all I would get was just fear constantly. I'm really worried for you. And to the point where I started worrying for myself.
Right.
And then there was this realization, whether or not you believe in God or a higher power or whatever name you might call it, there was a moment where I thought, you know, I actually asked my best friend and I said, you constantly are telling me you're afraid of me having to learn these things. And I go, you believe in the same God that I do. And you say that this calling or going on a mission is inspired. Don't you think that like he would make a path for me to learn the language. If that's something that I'm supposed to do, I mean, if this is inspired and this comes from God, wouldn't there be a way for me to learn the language? Like, why are you so afraid? And he kind of stopped and he was like, yeah, you're right. And then I got onto my mission and I learned, and I had this goal of like, I'm going to speak Cantonese like a native person within 6 months. I want to speak without an accent. I want to speak fluently. I want to be able to fool people. And I remember praying about it. And 6 months after that moment, and I put in the time, I put in the work. And I remember being on the phone call, like literally 6 months after that date. And the person on the phone saying, so where in Hong Kong did you grow up? But they're speaking to me in Cantonese.
Oh,
where in Hong Kong did you grow
wow.
up? And I'm like, oh, I actually didn't grow up in Hong Kong. And they're like, well, did you grow up like just outside, like in Canton? I'm like, no, I'm actually not Chinese. And they're like, what do you mean? And I go, well, I'm actually Iranian. I grew up in Utah, in the United States. And from that moment forward, it was, now I'm going to do the same thing with Chinese. I want to be able to speak two dialects so fluently that people just stop to listen. And it happened. And then I started realizing, like, okay, I went back to Utah and I started kind of getting curious of like, where are all these fears coming from?
Right.
And the most ridiculous thing happened. I started realizing that every single one of these fears wasn't usually even from that person's own experience.
Right.
It was from just things that they heard.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how stupid is that? How
know.
ridiculous is that? That like, it's not even coming from, like, my dad didn't try his own business and fail.
Yeah.
He was so afraid of doing it that he never tried.
Oh my
And
God.
then telling me that I can't do this because it's very difficult
Yeah.
from a place of not even trying.
Yes. It's like limiting beliefs that get passed down from generation to generation. I mean, I can't tell you how much I love what you're saying, because I think once you step into that fear and then you look back and you think like, I mean, it's nothing to even be afraid of. Like, I think a lot of the stuff that we fear, we make so much bigger in our head, like as if, like you said, like, okay, you fail and then what? Like, you're not going to end up becoming homeless, living in the streets. Like, for the most part, you'll figure something out. But I think we create this thing, like, if I take this step, or if I don't learn, if I can't do this, like, it's going to be the end of the world. Like you said, it's not from any real life experience, because once you do it and you fail and you realize, okay, it wasn't that big of a deal anyways, it's just this buildup from everyone around you and everyone putting their fears on you and worrying about what everybody else is going to say. And it's all fake.
Completely. And it's unfortunate that we buy into these notions so much. And when people ask me, like, I'm not going to blow smoke up someone's ass and say like, oh yeah, it's really easy to go start your business. And there are plenty of people where it's not a good fit to be doing something on your own. Like, I'm kind of one of those in the sense of I'm not very good at working by myself, which is why I went into business with two business partners. And it's why we have a company now, because despite my kind of introverted nature, I do feed and crave social interaction.
Yeah.
Because when I get discouraged or depressed, I need somebody there to help lift me up. And I've always thought to myself, like, man, over the 10 years, if it was me by myself doing this, I think I would have probably left it and quit. And I'm fully upfront with like what to expect, but to not do something just because of the fear is an insane notion. And it goes back to like my high school art teacher was actually the person that told me. He sat me down, and I kid you not, this man said, I don't think art is the right direction for you. I would highly encourage that you consider putting your time somewhere else.
Jeez.
And I don't know how long. I listened to him.
Yeah.
I put my pencils down and everything down on that day, and I didn't pick them back up for 10 years.
Oh my God.
And it was like, when I finally got back into it, I realized that my art teacher, he was speaking out of a type of love. All of these people around us are generally speaking out of a type of love that they have for you. They want you to succeed. They want you to be happy, and they're afraid.
Yeah.
And I realized that my high school art teacher would constantly talk about these art shows that he would put on and how difficult it was to sell a piece of art. And it dawned on me a decade later that when it came to painting and drawing, he said the words that he said because he didn't want me to waste my time.
Yeah.
He didn't have the understanding that, like, maybe this is the wrong medium for Pye. Maybe the medium of painting and pencils is not the right area of art. I came to realize that later in life when I was 30 years old almost and deciding just to become a photographer.
I think what you're saying, and we could go on this forever because I think a lot of us, maybe later in, when we get into our 30s and stuff, we start realizing how many things happened in our childhood that just created these stories. And like you said, it wasn't a mean spirited thing. It was something that someone said to you that you internalized so deeply. And that person probably didn't even realize, there's a lot of times that even children say things to other children, not trying to hurt them, but you internalize that so much and you create these like stories about yourself and you limit because we want to limit pain and rejection and whatnot. And so we just stop doing things we're not good at. And I think that a lot of people relate to that. The thing is a lot of people still in their 30s, 40s and stuff don't go back and pick up other things and say like, hey, maybe I am creative. I have the same thing. If ever in my life, I've told myself I'm not creative and I'm just now exploring creative things that I really love. I can't tell you how many times I would tell people I don't have a creative bone in my body. And I don't even know where that came from, but it's just something that starts when you're a kid and it just keeps going on. So, I think a lot of people relate to that. And I think that you're very, not only wise, but lucky that you can see it this way. Cause I think a lot of people, even in their 30s or 40s or 50s, still don't see that, So there's something to be said for that. Hey guys, we'll get back to the episode in 1 second. I just wanted to let you know that I am offering a free masterclass at the end of this month because I know so many of you want to start a side hustle or even figure out what your next step should be, but there just never seems to be any time between kids and work and a million other obligations. It seems like starting something on the side is a pipe dream. I get it. I was there, but I found a system that helped me manage my calendar and set realistic goals that I can work to and actually create the things that I want to do. And it has allowed me to start a company from scratch, which included figuring out design, hardware, manufacturing, software, all the things, and produce this podcast and pump out weekly content while only working part-time and staying at home with my kids. And I only do that because I have a system that works. And I want to teach it to you because I don't want time to be the thing that is stopping you from pursuing your dreams. So if you want to learn it, I would love to have you there. I'm only offering it twice live. It's July 29th and 30th. You can sign up at quitterclub.com/plan. Hope to see you there. And now back to the episode. I want to kind of fast forward. How did you pick up a camera? How did you get into photography then?
So the Westar didn't pan out. We kind of gave up on that route of looking for investments and ideas. We tried a few other things and nothing was kind of working. And meanwhile, we're living off savings and my ex-wife was working at the time, not doing crazy well, but it was enough to kind of paired with the savings. We had a runway. Mm-hmm. And so did, Justin, so did Chris. So we started up a web design kind of consulting company, hoping to maybe in the meanwhile, we can get some business just doing consulting work. We found a contact at the Compton Unified School District who said, yes, let's have you come and do some consulting work. Interestingly, they actually had us do some consulting on processes, like what we used to do with auditing. Mm-hmm. Then it transitioned into, help us also with the web design stuff. So we started doing that. And then they called us one day and they said, hey, for the website, we actually need these photos. Can you guys handle that? Can you guys do that? And I'm on the phone with them in my 1-bedroom apartment in Gardena, which is right next to Compton, not necessarily a great area. And Justin's next to me with his desk in my apartment with Chris on the other side. Absolutely. Let me transfer to my photography division. We didn't own a camera. We didn't, I had my iPhone 1 at the time. It was just we need to make some money and I'm sure we can do whatever they need to get done. So let's just do this. And so I put them on hold and handed the phone to Justin. And Justin, continued the whole kind of let's fake it till we make it thing. And he said, yeah, totally. I'm going to send out my best photographer to cover it. And then he hands the phone off to Chris. And then Chris is like, okay, we'll, I'll come out and do the shoot. So they go, we want to get these images. And it's nothing crazy. We're already doing the design work and the mock-ups and all that kind of stuff. And I actually went to Costco and bought a Rebel kit for Chris.
Oh my God.
This is how far out of the know I was when it came to photography. I went to Costco to buy what everyone thinks is a professional camera because you can change lenses on it. So I got a Rebel and I came back and Chris was like, well, we got 2 weeks. And I go, well, I'll just, this is the area that kind of interests me the most. So I'll start reading about it and I'll take all the crash courses and I'll learn and I'll teach you what you need to know to go do this shoot.
Oh my God.
So 2 weeks later, I still know nothing about photography, but I'm sitting there teaching Chris everything. And he's about to head out the door. And he's like, dude, it's been 2 weeks and I still don't really get it. You know what? Just put it on auto and we'll shoot raw. It'll be fine. He arrives and they have a helicopter. It's like an airfield. And he goes, what are we doing here? And they go, oh, we're going to go up in the air and take pictures.
Oh my God.
So they take him up in the air in the helicopter and they say, we need pictures of the city. And then they fly him around the same spot of Compton. He comes back like an hour later and he's got 1,500 pictures that, if you can imagine, like just with your iPhone, taking 1,500 pictures from the same spot in the sky, every image looks identical. So he hands me the card and I start looking at it and I'm like, this is all the same photograph. What do they need actually? And because like, I'm not sure. They just had me go up and take pictures. So I called them up and I said, well, what are we trying to do with these photographs? We have a lot of beautiful pictures. We did have a lot of beautiful pictures. They were just the exact same one. And I was like, what do you want us to do with this? And they go, oh, we wanted to create this billboard where a teacher is teaching a classroom. And I go, but Chris just went up in a helicopter to take pictures of the city. And they're like, oh yeah, we want to use that for like maybe some other thing, like maybe another piece of kind of background, whatever, for a presentation or maybe something else. I go, okay, well, we need to schedule another shoot to come out. And they go, yeah, okay, bill us for it. And we're okay. And we're not charging a ton at the time. Like,
right.
We're trying to deliver a better value than what we're charging. Obviously, we're charging like $400 or $500 each one of these. He goes and he shoots this teacher in a classroom and they go and set it up and he comes back with these images and we massage them over in Photoshop. We're not good photographers, but I did do web design just as a side job in college. So I put together these mock-ups and then they take these and they put them on actual billboards.
Oh my God.
And you could drive around Gardena and you could see these things. And by no means were they like fantastic examples of artwork, but they did the job and they were decent designs. And we were driving around Gardena seeing it, our own work on the back of a bus.
That's incredible.
That's a cool feeling to have. And that's kind of the feeling that we fell in love with that carried us, initially into, okay, let's think about photography. Let's research what area we should do. 6 months later, we had a focus, we had an idea, and we shot our very first wedding.
Oh my God, that's so incredible. I mean, I think there's so many things to be learned from this, but I'm just wondering, like, when you got this call, was there a time when you just thought, like, when that web startup didn't work and you were, doing these other jobs, like, hey, maybe I should go back and try to get a job as an accountant? Or was it just like, I hate it, I'm going to figure it out regardless of what it takes?
We all finished our CPAs and got our licenses and everything just in case we needed it, fall back on. But to be honest, I think all of us were of the idea of like, if this doesn't work out and we're, a year or two into this and it's just like not panning out, I think all of us were just like, let's go back to school and figure out something else. Like do something not accounting related. So
right.
I don't know that any of us would have gone back to public accounting.
I think a lot of people in that situation would say, there's already so many wedding photographers. Like, why would there be space for me? Like, why would I ever try to compete with all these people that have been doing wedding photography for so many years? I don't even know photography. Like, what made you guys think, like, why not? Like, let's try to jump into this field.
Being the one that was kind of pushing the route of photography, Justin and Chris kind of put it on me to, well, why don't you go to this conference in Vegas and just kind of see what it's like being a portrait and wedding photographer, whatever kind of photography, just go and do research. So I went to this conference. It was really eye-opening because not knowing really much about photography, you would have these photographers up on stage and they would be speaking and teaching these large audiences of 100, 250, 500 plus people. And I would be sitting in these audiences and I'd be talking to people around me and I would ask them like, oh, let me see your work. And coming from a place of like not really knowing good work versus bad work, it all looked great to me.
Right.
It was all good stuff. I could tell really bad work, like if it was just not good, but stylistic differences aside, a lot of these people were doing great work. And what I realized was the people that were generally on the stage were ones that understood business. I went to probably like 15 to 20 lectures that year. I was just taking notes and I was like, yep, the common trait between every single one of these people is that they understand business. And when I came back home, I said, none of these people on stage were CPAs, nor did they have the backgrounds that we do. Have they seen in how a legitimate business is run? We can learn the artist side. Like that's just a technical skill that you can learn. But from the standpoint of like understanding how to communicate with people, how to operate a business, how to ask clients for money, this is something that I think we have a really unique edge. So we kind of brought that approach to photography.
And that's such a unique thing to say, though. I mean, I don't know if you realize that, because a lot of people look at this and think like, no, I mean, if you want to be a photographer, like the first part that you have to have is that love for photography and knowing photography. And then, you can do like business is sort of the second part to that, or an afterthought. And I think most, photographers are kind of like these mom and pop shops where the photography is like the love of it. And then the business part is kind of not an afterthought, but it's not like their strong suit, which is what you're saying, about the people at the conference. It's so interesting to me that you would look at a field like that and kind of come at it instead of from the creative side, from the business side, and say like, hey, we can create a good business out of this kind of creative endeavor.
Yeah. And I think like in all of our training courses and all the books that I write, like when we talk about photography as a passion, I am very upfront to tell people that nothing will derail you from your world of professional photography more so than feeling like passion for photography is what you need to be successful. Mm-hmm. Because what you truly need is passion for the process. Like the process is the Monday through Friday, 40 hours of suck that comes before going out and actually shooting. It's the dealing with client emails. It's the setting up of processes. It's the, billings and accounting and administrative and marketing and social media and every one of these other facets that make up 90% of your work week. That's what you need to be passionate about.
Right.
And it was very evident to me early on that like most of these people just like to take pretty pictures.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's like saying you want to become Stephen King because you really enjoyed writing like your journal on Facebook.
Right.
Like they're two completely separate things. Yes, you enjoy writing and yes, you're good at it. And you've written several great inspirational posts on your blog or on Facebook or on all these different places. But saying that you now have a passion for this and you want to set a goal to become a prolific writer is a clear misalignment of expectation. Mm-hmm. Of like, what is it to be a prolific writer versus what is it to occasionally write on your blog?
Right.
And that's what I notice is that when people sit down and when they read a book like where Stephen King is, I actually read like I think Stephen King wrote a book called like How to Write. I like reading a lot. Mm-hmm. And he wrote this book of like, this is what it actually is to write.
Yeah.
And being in the process of finishing my first book, I've come to realize that it is sitting down and looking at a screen, staring blankly at it, not knowing what to write, right. Trying to get your focus on the days that you're just not feeling it, pushing through, setting aside the time. That is the process of it. And then once it's all done, realizing that it's crap, getting it edited, and then realizing you have to basically start over and refresh everything.
Right.
And then once that's done, you got to market it. Mm-hmm. And so when we just did this business series last week and we kind of started this off with, let's set the right expectations. And I asked them to define out what they think I'm passionate about. And of course, they all said photography. Mm-hmm. I said, no, like I like taking pictures. I enjoy it. But my passion stems from frameworks and systems. I like creating frameworks and systems like that. That is where my passion is creating something that makes a product or a process repeatable.
Yeah. Which you guys have done, I mean, incredibly with Lin and Jirsa. I mean, just to give people like an idea of where you guys started in 2008 with the three partners, you, Chris, and Justin, right? And now how many employees are you? How many photographers and editors and stuff do you guys have?
Well, so between SLR Lounge, which is our educational platform, and Lin and Jirsa, which is our client serving side, and we also just started a commercial brand, we have about 50 employees.
Wow.
And we're one of the only multi-million-dollar like portrait photography studios in the country.
Yeah. That's incredible. I mean, to be able to scale it where you have the same quality, like where you have photographers. I mean, how many portrait shoots or weddings and stuff do you guys do a year?
We do around 350 to 400 weddings and about 1,000 total client commissions.
That's insane. I mean, to be able to scale a photography company that has the same quality to that large, like you said, a multi-million-dollar business. I had never heard of it until I saw you guys kind of build this empire. And I'm so impressed. And I think it does a really good example though for other people that if you think outside of the box, like even with these creative types of jobs, like if you treat it as a business and if you, like you said, like the systems and the processes and stuff, there is a possibility of scaling these businesses.
There is. And it's also made us hungry we've kind of come to this place where we've looked back and gone, we took something that nobody thought was scalable and we scaled it. Mm-hmm. Now we're like, let's take something that's actually very scalable and let's see what we can do. So now we're kind of getting that bug again to create something fresh and new and do something that is a little bit different and evolve it a little bit. Not to say that we're done shooting by any means. No, we love what we do, but you kind of take what you've learned and change and grow it into something new.
Do you mean like in addition to the SLR Lounge, the educational platform, or is that what you're talking about scaling?
No, so we have that. And yes, we're growing that as well. But we started Rise 8 Media where we want to scale commercial production. But
oh, wow.
We're also looking outside of like just even photography media, this area in general to like, what else can we kind of apply this knowledge to? Because if you think about it, it's a very beautiful skill set. Most companies struggle to create media.
Right.
That's one of the biggest needs that a startup has is like, how do we create our own video? How do we create our own photos? Like hiring out is too expensive. Doing this is not going to work. And once you've done this for a period of time, you kind of have that skill set of, I can create a product and market it all at once. And so it's a really unique skill set to develop over time. It was one of our favorite. We actually knew this early on when we launched the business. We thought going down this route would actually help us to create new business in the future as we'd be able to create all of our own media and all of our own needs in-house.
Wow. So when are you guys getting ready to launch that? Is that going to be kind of in the near future?
That's a secret for now.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you already have your hands full, so I can't even imagine how you have the time to start a new business, but that's incredible.
Yeah. We start up on average, there's something new that we do every other year. And to give people an idea, I think we've done, me and Justin combined since college have 25 startups.
Oh my God.
22 of them failed or we exited.
But see, that's a great point to bring up is that, again, like this going back to the whole failure thing, and I think it's easy to look at you, and I'm sure a lot of people in the photography world and people that know you will look at you and think like, oh my God, look how successful he is. He has this huge company and they're doing, education and they do photography and they're making all this money. But I don't think a lot of people really realize how many things that you've tried and how you build off each one. You learn something from each endeavor and it may not work. And, we put this like huge thing on failing, but that's sort of what it takes in order to get to the successes. It's so rare to like hit it out of the park your first time and then never do anything else again.
Yeah, it's interesting that that's how it works in reality, but that's not how we're taught growing up. Because growing up, if you're not good at something, very quickly at a young age, let's say like you're not good at like shooting a basketball.
Mm-hmm.
It's very typical now for kids just to say, I'm not good at it and give up.
Right.
Like with my children, I retrain them every single day. My son will now say this, like every time he does something and he'll come to me and he goes, Daddy, I failed. And I go, yep, you did. But what does that mean? And he goes, that means that I'm getting better.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
I'm like, yes, he's 8 years old. I'm like, man, if we could hold on to that mentality of like, that is the right process to not
absolutely
expect greatness every single time that you, pick up something new.
Yeah.
Then that greatness kind of comes as a natural byproduct. And the money comes as a natural byproduct instead of like this thing that you're just seeking and hunting.
I mean, it's not even the greatness. It's like realizing that each step is sort of what leads to the next step. What you learned probably from those original startups, even the fundraising. I mean, it taught you something about that process, so the next time, let's say your next business, you wanted to do fundraising. I mean, you only learn by doing that. Or now with Lin and Jirsa, I mean, obviously this was a success, but learning all of these processes just puts you in a better position to be successful on your next run, So like, it's not going to just happen. You have to take those steps. You have to fail. You have to learn and then move on.
Yeah. So I built that slide into our presentation last week for the business side is 92% of our businesses, we've either exited or failed.
I love that.
As kind of like a reminder of we are getting good at launching a new business and our percentage of success, like the likelihood goes up significantly, but by no means is it ever guaranteed. And so we took a risk 3 years ago with an investment that didn't pan out. So it still is going to happen. It's just one of those, like, this is the process. Like you said, these are the steps that you take.
Yeah. Well, I'm so inspired by your story. I obviously was inspired before I knew about it. And I'm glad that you got to share it. I'm sure a lot of people can find a lot of wisdom. Do you have any advice or any research? Like you said, you like to read, any books that you would recommend somebody that is sort of stuck in that job that they hate and they do have that fear and, the notion of stability, like anything that you think could help someone in that position?
Goodness. Well, there's a lot of books that I like. I try to get through 1 to 2 books a week.
Do you sleep, Pye?
No.
Okay, there it is.
No, I sleep, but actually a lot of time, like I call it garbage time, that you can use if you get a pair of, I have these waterproof headphones.
Oh.
And I'm like, man, I could I love learning. That's my thing. And I think if there was one piece of advice I would give to anyone out there is like, become a great learner.
Mm-hmm.
That is in my opinion, that's the biggest key, because I don't feel like I'm smarter than anybody. I don't feel like I was given any more or less talent or skills than the next person standing next to me with the same average, scores in school. I had all of those. I was that person. I was the guy that almost failed the ACTs, that couldn't get into college.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that I'm willing to do is I will outlearn you.
Mm-hmm.
I will spend my time learning. And that's been the one thing that's like always paid me back in dividends that are so far above what I've invested. I will spend anything when it comes to learning. Like I have subscriptions to Audible. I buy books on Amazon. I buy, summaries. I have every single possible thing just to help me to learn and make use of that time. Like, so I got these headphones, these Plantronic wire, or they're the same ones I'm using right now. They're waterproof.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, if I can listen to a book while I'm showering, for example, that's an extra 20 minutes a day.
Right.
And I can start utilizing time standing in a line somewhere and driving the car and doing all these different things that are just rote exercises that you can easily listen to a book while doing.
Right.
And then I was like, well, if I can train myself to listen at faster speeds, then I can do even more of those.
Yeah.
So I started slowly going from 1x speed to 1.5 to 2 times to 2.5 to 3 times.
Oh, wow.
And then you can finish a 12-hour book in a couple hours. And you can get a couple hours a week just in the shower. Like you can finish 2 books.
Yeah.
It became more for me about learning how to learn quicker and better and more effectively. I think that's been the best competitive advantage that I've had.
No, that's great advice. And if anybody wants to find you, like either Lin and Jirsa, or reach out to you personally or anything, like where's the best place for them to find you?
So at Pye Jirsa is my personal hashtags, usually on social media that much. Mm-hmm. So I usually post and kind of hop off, but probably the best place to follow us would be at Lin and Jirsa. LINANDJIRSA is our wedding and portrait brand. At Rise 8 Media is our commercial brand, and at SLR Lounge is our educational brand.
Perfect. And I will link to all of these in the show notes. So anybody that wants to just go to the website and look at the show notes. Thank you, Pye. I really appreciate you being here. I think you've given so much wisdom, and I'm sure it'll be very helpful. It was very inspiring to me to talk to you as always. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. I can't tell you how much it means to me. If you liked the podcast, please rate and review us on iTunes. It'll help other people find the show. If you want to connect or reach out, follow along on Instagram and Facebook at Lessons from a Quitter, and on Twitter at Quitter Podcast. I would love to hear from you guys, and I'll see you on the next episode.